And hi, everyone. We are so thrilled to have with us today the really amazing and award-winning naturopath, Rebecca Kellerstein, who is actually my naturopath and completely changed my life when I was around like 46, 47, in the midst of like, what's going on here? And we are so thrilled to be speaking with Rebecca today. And she's going to be myth busting menopause for us because it's full of like murky landscapes and misconceptions. So hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Tracy. Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's just a treat. It really is. And if you see me looking down at my phone, it's because I'm just checking messages and see if anybody's asking questions. And perhaps can we take some questions at the end?
Absolutely.
All right. Awesome. Okay. Well, let's get straight to it. I'm going to use my, co-pilot techniques here and make Becky the host of the meeting because she has put together a great slide presentation for us. So give me 1 minute and then Becky can take it away. Okay. I'm going to make you host. So you are flying the plane.
I'm flying the plane. Oh, I see. I'm the host now.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So what's going to happen is, as I made a whole slide presentation for you and all of the people watching. As I flip to my slideshow, you will lose the picture of me, but you'll see a big R for me, Rebecca, and then I'll come back. So I'll be flitting in and out as you and I speak, Tracy. So
Amazing.
I'm just going to get that going now. Hang on tight. I want to share my screen. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the Zoom call in just a second. And I should be back with you now. Are you with me here?
Yes, except it's my screen, it's my face on the screen. So you just need to look for your slides.
I need to see my slides. Okay.
There we go.
Okay. So, but Tracy, as I flip back and forth between you and me, are you seeing me now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'd rather chat first like this,
okay.
And then we'll split back and forth.
Amazing.
All right. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to discuss a few things about myths of menopause, the myths surrounding perimenopause. I think a lot of people have misconceptions as to what it is. First of all, would you not agree, Tracy, that a lot of people have a major...
Absolutely. We've lost your slides again, and it's me on the screen for some reason.
Oh, I thought it's because you and I are having a chat, but what we can do is we can go right to my slides.
Oh, okay.
And then have no issues. So I think a lot of people are under the misconception that menopause is a disease process that women need to suck up, that it's something that needs to be treated. But in fact, menopause is not a disease. Just like teenagehood is not a disease and pregnancy is not a disease and childbearing years are not a disease, so too menopause is not a disease. It refers to a time in a person's life, and it's truly defined as an absence of a period for a year. And that's all it is, just the absence of a period for a year. So if a person comes to me and says that they're in menopause, but they've had a period every 3 months, they're not quite in menopause yet. Where they are is in perimenopause. So perimenopause it specifically means around the time of menopause. This is the time in women's lives where the female hormones made in the ovaries start to fluctuate. Sometimes they go a little high, sometimes they go a little low. And eventually over the course of time, they decline. And I think of perimenopause as the second teenage years. This is a major hormonal flux time for us. It usually starts a few years before the onset of menopause. It can be as early as 8 to 10 years before menopause. And it's the time of transition to when ladies are no longer childbearers. So I have a few people who say to me, I expect the symptoms of menopause. They're just something that's normal and it's a part of life. And what I would say is the symptoms that are associated with menopause, just like symptoms of any sort of dis-ease in our bodies, might be common. So if you had a group of 100 women who are going through perimenopause or who are going through menopause, and you question them about what their symptoms are, there might be a lot of similarities to what a lot of women are dealing with, whether it's hot flashes or night sweats or vaginal dryness, low sex drive, hair loss, fatigue, irritability, whatever it may be. And so everybody thinks, well, you're experiencing it, I'm experiencing it, so it must be normal. They're common symptoms, but they're not normal. So this little meme of I'm going through menopause and I hate everyone and everything lately and this is going to kill me, this is actually a sign of imbalance. And when a person comes to me with these symptoms, what I need to do as a naturopathic doctor is I need to try to figure out where the imbalances lie and what precisely is going on, because each particular lady who is having symptoms associated with this time of their life has some sort of imbalance happening. I need to figure out what it is. Is it a question of lowering hormones, female hormones specifically, and how can we balance that? Or is it related to something else that needs to be addressed? So I have another myth that I hear a lot, which is that once we go through menopause, our bodies no longer make any estrogen and progesterone. Well, it's true that in females, estrogen and progesterone are made in the highest quantities in our ovaries. So when we are in our childbearing years, that seems to be the case. But regardless of whether we are in childbearing years or whether we are in perimenopause or menopause, estrogen and progesterone are also synthesized in somewhat less quantities in the outer portions of our adrenal glands, which are these little organs that sit on top of our kidneys. They look like little hats. And the adrenal glands are actually a really important thing because, just FYI, and a little bit later on, we're going to be talking about stress and how stress may be one of the main reasons for why a lot of women get these symptoms associated with menopause and perimenopause. Just another thing that estrogen not only is made in the adrenal glands, it's also made in fat cells. So we have the capacity, and we should healthily still be producing some degree of estrogen and progesterone in a healthy balance, even when we are no longer baby-making machines.
Wow,
The next
so interesting.
question, sorry, you have a question?
That's amazing. It really is. I mean, I certainly did have the misconception, and I know it's common among many people, that once you hit menopause, that's it. You've got like zero estrogen.
Yeah, no, it's not the case at all. We naturally produce some degree of estrogen outside of our ovaries. And that's why I think that, and I've seen in clinical practice, and so have many people, that we can actually balance hormones properly so that women who are experiencing symptoms of perimenopause and menopause, even if they're related to lowering estrogen levels and lowering progesterone levels, we can still balance them naturally by supporting the body's own healing systems. That, in fact, I dislike the idea of having to go toward hormone replacement therapy or even bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, because I don't feel like that's a natural phenomenon. I really think it's important to take our own healing systems and balance them out themselves. That's the main deal.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Or to at least give that a good try.
Certainly to give it a good try.
Mhm.
That if a person is in dire straits, that bioidentical hormones may be a last resort, but I have to tell you that in clinical practice, I've seen a significant number of ladies get much better without having to even go there, not even for a second,
Mm.
because the actual imbalances may lie partly there, but partly in other places um, that were imbalanced to start with, which
Right.
is exacerbating the problem.
Mhm.
And if we can
Mhm.
balance these issues, then they feel better. And we do it all that, which I think is so cool.
Right. Super.
Okay, let me switch back to the slides.
Right. And I suppose that's where it's this feeling of, it's like, is our body giving us warning signals as we get into perimenopause and menopause that there is this imbalance, right? That it doesn't come out the blue.
Yes, exactly. In fact, I'm going to deal with that later. They're warning signs, but I would actually argue that the warning signs actually came way before,
Mm-hmm.
and that the symptoms of perimenopause or menopause are actually new manifestations of existing problems that may have actually been in place for years,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes even in teenage years, sometimes
Oh.
even before that. I think that as we go through our life stages, you'll find that things happen. So, for example, when we were in our childbearing years, let's say after pregnancy, and we had lowered sex drive, and we were totally exhausted, and we resented our husbands, and we had to balance our children's lives with ourselves, and we were super moms, and we had to clean the house and cook the food and make the meals, and also earn, and we were stressed out and wired and tired, and we had PMS. And we had eczema, and we have inflammatory conditions. I think these are all part and parcel of what happens a little later on, that these symptoms that weren't addressed at the start are now showing new manifestations.
Fascinating. Cool.
Yeah. So I shall continue on with my slide presentation. Okay. So that's where we were just talking, right here, Tracy,
Wow. Yeah.
that that menopausal and perimenopausal symptoms are often new manifestations of chronic health issues. So even though hot flashes and night sweats and vaginal dryness may be new, because or aggravated by rather changing hormonal levels, the hormonal imbalances, which aren't necessarily just female hormonal imbalances, were likely present for longer. So as you see here, it might be related to liver dysfunction. It might be because of a nutrient deficiency. It could be because of poor lifestyle choices, food or sleep or toxins in the environment or how we take it up. It could be because our blood sugar is dysregulated. Our stress levels are too high. It may be related to our digestion and leaky gut. It could be chronic inflammation. And just to let you know that inflammation, leaky gut, poor lifestyle, liver dysfunction, blood sugar regulations, those all relate to the adrenal glands, those hormones, that organ that sits on top of the kidneys that outputs the hormones associated with stress. All of those play a factor in stress. So it's not just declining hormones. The other thing that could be an issue is a thyroid disorder. So all of these things working in tandem, or rather not working in tandem, may be issues that may be causing or exacerbating symptoms. Now, I have a whole bunch of people who come to me during perimenopause to say that since entering perimenopause, their cycles have become more frequent, or that they're heavier, and they want to know whether that's a normal phenomenon. Nope, it's not. It's a common phenomenon, but not a normal phenomenon. So typically what happens is as we enter perimenopause and estrogen and progesterone in our ovaries start to decline, the normal state of events is that we should actually start to experience irregular cycles, meaning they might be a little bit longer from the start of one period to the next. It might be shorter, it might be lighter. So as we cycle toward menopause, people normally start missing periods or less periods. But when I hear that somebody is having a period that is too soon and too heavy, I start thinking of a couple of things that may be wrong and that I have to rule out. First of all, an underactive thyroid, one of the symptoms of underactive thyroid is a much heavier period that comes far more frequently. I also have to rule out the possibility that someone has developed a cervical polyp or a uterine polyp or a fibroid. The other possibility is something called adenomyosis, which is where a portion of the uterus lining may have actually invaded into the muscular tissue of the uterus. And well, that's a benign substance. It's a benign phenomenon, but it causes pain and heavy bleeding. These changes, the polyps, the fibroids, are related to imbalances in estrogen, specifically too high estrogen relative to the rest. And it's specifically related, for the most part, I find, to the liver not being able to properly process the amount of estrogen that we make. And so consequently, a buildup of estrogen builds up in our bodies. The last thing that I have to rule out, although this is a much rarer thing, is endometrial cancer. So usually when a person says to me that they have started to bleed too frequently and the periods are heavy, one of the first things that I do is I refer them back to their medical doctor to go and get a transvaginal ultrasound so that they can see precisely what's going on and make sure that that's just not the case. Okay.
Amazing.
Now,
Yeah. Because I think sometimes, although it's great that we have this awareness of perimenopause and menopause now, we have to be careful that we're not overlooking things that could be sinister and just saying, oh, it's perimenopause, right? Or it's menopause.
exactly. And actually the sinister things might creep up. I mean, it's something that I'm always on the lookout for, but I think that anytime we're talking about any sort of symptom, to me, it's sinister. It doesn't necessarily mean cancer, like not sinister
Yes.
that way, but sinister in that the body is now out of balance and it needs to be tuned up like your car.
Yeah. So interesting. Yeah, because I did, in my kind of late-ish 40s, I was diagnosed with adenomyosis. Unbearable. Unbearable. And my urogynecologist at the time said to me that there is a chance that the symptoms could go away as I started getting more into menopause. And I don't know, it just vanished, thankfully. But I have done a lot of things to help balance my hormones, and I think my estrogen levels have dropped. Thank goodness I didn't opt for a hysterectomy, and I did try and get some more balancing going on. So that's a good news story, right?
I love that.
But I think it also just goes to your point that there is so much that we can do if we want to try.
Absolutely. I think that we all can strive toward achieving our optimal balance so that life is good. That's the name of the game. We all just want to have fun. Life is short. We want to have fun.
Yeah. Amazing.
But going to your point now about worrying about something that, thinking about a symptom of menopause or perimenopause and just checking it off to being a symptom of menopause and not anything else. One of the common misconceptions that I hear is that if a person is somewhere between their 30s and their 50s and they're starting to get regular night sweats. That the only reason for this is because of perimenopause and menopause. So yeah, I mean, night sweats can certainly be due to a lowering estrogen. And if a person is around 50-ish or their periods are on the decline, regardless of whether they're 50 or not, and they are without any other symptoms, this may very well be the reason. But there are other reasons for chronic sweating, especially at night. So one of the main deals would be an overactive thyroid. Although with overactive thyroid, you would get sweats, not just in the night, depending on how bad it is, but sweating, just spontaneous hot heat and sweating is associated with an overactive thyroid. Another reason for a night sweat might be blood sugar dysregulation, specifically a drop in blood sugar at night. This is often due to adrenal fatigue. Remember those little organs that are sitting on top of the kidneys that are involved with stress and that also produce estrogen and progesterone. Adrenal, when a person is under chronic stress, one of the things that go off balance is blood sugar control. Another issue that may cause night sweats would be something called autonomic neuropathy. So this is a group of symptoms that occur when there's damage to the nerves that govern bodily function. So this could be as a result of injury to nerves. So I had a patient who came to me after a car accident. And even though it's not a lady, it's a man, this particular individual was suffering because of that head trauma. He was suffering from things like digestive disorders, hot flashes, night sweats, low sex drive, fuzzy thinking, difficulty sleeping. A lot of these things sound like menopausal symptoms. Other reasons for autonomic neuropathy might be diabetes. When the nerves are coated with sugar, they don't function effectively. And one of the other reasons for autonomic neuropathy might be an inflammatory nerve disease like multiple sclerosis or Guillain-Barré syndrome. Alcohol abuse may also do this. Another reason for night sweats could be because of certain vitamin deficiencies. So for example, did you know that a vitamin B12 deficiency can cause a night sweat? And did you also know that vitamin D deficiencies can also cause night sweats? And specifically the type of night sweats that a vitamin D deficiency causes is a sweat about the head.
Nope, I did not know. That's
I know.
Yeah.
It's not really common information, but I find it fascinating, that people just chalk these things up to, yeah, it's because my hormones and I'm not having any periods anymore. But no, there are so many reasons for this. Other reasons might be certain chronic infections like Lyme disease, for example. And finally, the more sinister one that we have to rule out is because of cancer. So I think you alluded a little earlier on in this presentation that, people might be interested in going to hormone replacement therapy, that might be the savior of all things wrong. And I do have to say that there are some misconceptions around this. First of all, the idea that synthetic hormone replacement therapy, and I say synthetic in parentheses, that synthetic hormone replacement therapy is unsafe because it's not natural. Well, it is unsafe. It's been shown to be unsafe, but the idea that it's not natural is actually false. These hormones are actually naturally derived. These so-called synthetic hormones are extracted from horse urine, and they're not altered. The estrogen and progesterone that is given to women is manufactured from horse estrogen and progesterone that's excreted from the urine. So it's quite natural, but the molecular configuration is not really identical to what humans make. And unfortunately, as we have now learned, hormone replacement therapy does seem to be injurious. So a lot of studies show that when taken for 5 years or more, studies actually show that they don't improve the quality of life. And after 1 year of taking the hormone replacement therapy, the risk of invasive breast cancer starts to rise. And with every year that you take it, the higher the risk goes. It also does not appear to prevent heart disease, which was something that HRT was given to women for, and in fact had been shown to actually increase the rates of blood clots in the legs and the lungs, to increase the rates of heart attacks and stroke. And for you, Tracy, and for those out there who deal with pelvic floor, you might be interested to know that studies have shown, depending on the study, depends on the number, but the use of hormone replacement therapy increased rates of uterine prolapse anywhere between 23% and 53%. And that researchers found that postmenopausal women taking hormone replacement therapy were 2 to 5 times more likely to develop incontinence compared to similarly aged women who were hormone free.
Very interesting.
It blew me out of the water
Yeah.
when I
Sure.
figured that out.
Mm-hmm.
So then the thought is obviously, well, not synthetic. What about bioidentical hormone? They must be safe because they are natural. Well, funnily enough, even though bioidentical hormones are derived from soy and wild yam, so two herbal substances, they actually have been synthetically altered to create hormones to mimic what humans make. So they are, in fact, laboratory creations. So I wouldn't call them natural, only because although they're naturally derived, they have been chemically altered. As far as their safety goes, there have been a few very small studies that show certain things. So for example, they compared natural progesterone to progestin, which is the one that is the conventional version of progesterone. And it seems that the natural progesterone doesn't cause blood clots, and it also doesn't throw off our cholesterol lipid profile as much as progestin does. The other thought is that one of the forms of natural estrogen called estriol may be less likely to cause breast cancer, but the issue is there haven't been any large randomized studies, and there haven't been any smaller randomized controlled studies to determine the true safety of estriol supplementation and the increase of the incidences of breast cancer. So there's been absolutely no comparison that way. And there's no comparison between bioidentical hormones and how it relates to conventional hormone replacement therapy. So my concern with hormone replacement therapy, even with bioidentical, is because there hasn't been that kind of look-see to evaluate the efficacy, even though people who prescribe it say over and over again it's safe, because it hasn't been shown to definitely not increase risks of cancer. As a BRCA gene carrier myself, I have the breast cancer gene. I'd actually be concerned at the potential of even bioidentical hormones triggering a cancerous growth in me or in anybody like me. And the other thought is that it's just not natural for menopausal women to have very high levels of estrogen and progesterone. We weren't meant to have vaginal bleeding at a certain time in our life. It's just like I don't think of a 2-year-old having a period naturally. So too, I don't think of a 60-year-old having a period naturally. We are supposed to have certain balances of our hormones, but there still needs to be that new hormonal balance where we're healthy and happy. And I think that, and I've seen in practice and in myself, honestly, that there are more ways, there are natural ways to balance our hormones without using bioidentical hormones. And we can in fact stimulate and support our body's own natural equilibrium safely and effectively without having to go there, or at least to use these the bioidentical hormones as a very, very last resort. And I've got to tell you, about 99.9% of the people who come to me, so far, I've gotten good results.
Amazing. What about the argument, though, that people make that women are now living longer than they have before, and that we can live maybe 30, 40, even 50 years of our life in this menopausal state, and that estrogen is so protective for the brain and the heart and the bones? And so where do you get this balance? Is your view that we should be making enough estrogen naturally during menopause to provide the levels that are sufficient for brain health and bone health and heart health?
So the reason why estrogen is important for brain health and heart health and bone health is because estrogen plays a vital role, one of the vital roles in stimulating those biochemical processes to work. So going to the idea of do we have enough estrogen? Once we hit menopause, if our bodies are in balance, I do believe that we have enough estrogen. However, having said that, though, there are other ways that we can still stimulate those same pathways to ensure heart health, to ensure bone health, to ensure brain health, without actually artificially elevating estrogen to the point where we're actually vaginal bleeding again. So
Okay.
I do believe that in a healthy body, we have the ability to create enough estrogen and progesterone to keep our balance. And I also believe that there are ways to ensure that our brains work just as well as they did when we were 30, and our bones are strong, and we are free of heart disease.
Amazing. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it requires work. Hey, that's the caveat, I suppose.
Well, the thing is, I think that generally speaking, health requires effort. And I would argue that even in our teenage years, and although we probably weren't as self-aware as teenagers, and our 40 and 50 and 60-year-old selves could probably kick our teenage butts if we knew then what we know now. But I would argue that throughout life, we have to work on our health, that health is something that we have to take an active role in, that we can't be a passive passenger, because stuff happens. And I always view the body like a car. You got a beautiful Mercedes Benz that you've driven off the lot, and then it goes over bumps in the road, and maybe you let your kid drive it and it went over a curb. And then it got dinged up when somebody rammed themselves into the door. And if you don't take it into the shop every once in a while, at the end, you've got a clunker with the engine coming out. My thought is that you have to take an active role in your health, because just like you treat your car with respect and every once in a while you take it in for that oil change and tire rotation, so too, we need oil changes and tire rotations. We need a little TLC, and we need to identify when things are off balance so that we can continue to operate in this wonderful Mercedes-Benz that the universe gave us.
Love it. Love that analogy, right? And yeah, that whole kind of effort concept goes very much into the movement work that I do. Like, you've got to work your muscles. There's just no easy way around it. Effort is required, right?
Absolutely. And I think what you do is so very important, and especially around perimenopause and menopause, because as we age, our body's natural tendency is to start losing muscle mass.
Right.
And so,
yeah, I like to see it as like walking up an escalator. You don't keep walking, you're going that way.
You're going that way. Now, not to say that if you've gone that way already, and for those of you who are watching who are in their 60s or 70s or 80s, who may still be dealing with menopausal issues, not to say that if you have neglected your body so that you haven't exercised at all, you can't do it now because you're too old. It's a myth as well. You have to slow and deal with somebody who knows what they're doing so that you don't get hurt. And then you can slowly actually build up your muscle mass. I've actually seen 80-year-old weightlifting ladies who started weightlifting in their mid-70s. I want to be them.
I mean, that's what I just love about the body, right? That if you give
Yeah,
it the input, if you give it the effort, it responds. It's just
that's it.
beautiful. Yeah.
Just like a car, you can take it into the shop, you give it a little
Mhm.
tea, and you're going to be okay.
Yeah. Amazing. Good.
So I'm going to switch back to the slides now.
Mhm.
Okay. So the next myth that I hear often is that menopause and perimenopausal symptoms are specifically because of changing estrogen levels. And as I think that you've gotten my drift already, that perhaps that's just one of the players, or maybe it's not even a player, that maybe there are other reasons for play here that might be working concurrently, or triggering things just outright. So the first thing is sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone, testosterone, and even their precursors are originally derived from, so meaning they're made from cholesterol. So cholesterol has gotten a really bad rap. We want to lower our cholesterol levels to improve heart health. But in fact, if you take a look in medical texts, you will see that there are, in fact, cholesterol deficiency diseases, that if you don't have these enzymes that can actually produce cholesterol in your liver, because cholesterol is made from the liver. We get it from food, but the liver makes it too. So if there's a pathology with the way that cholesterol is synthesized in the liver, we get a whole host of problems. And in fact, when we go on cholesterol lowering meds because cholesterol lipid levels are too imbalanced and we want to protect our heart, it causes a whole host of symptoms, some of which may mimic perimenopausal or menopausal symptoms. So just ensuring, I guess, that we're getting an appropriate amount. So I think the take-home message is, unless you have an ethical or religious reason for not eating any sort of flesh food, we do require, I believe, some small degrees of flesh food cholesterol in order to. But that's where cholesterol is found in food sources. I think that they need to be healthy food sources, like, wild fish, especially the smaller fish, or pasture raised eggs, or wild or grass-fed beef, or pasture raised chicken. I believe that we need to have a little bit of this, maybe only a small amount, but I do believe that too. And I also believe that because cholesterol is made in the liver, that we have to protect our liver. So just going to point number 3, when the liver is overburdened, the body overheats. Actually, in Chinese medicine, it's thought that when the liver is overworked or when it's under pressure, it generates too much heat within itself. And because the liver is such a large organ, heat travels upward. So excess sweating arises from this. In order to try to cool the body down. So with a dysfunctional liver, when the liver is not working quite right, hot flashes manifest, hot flashes and sweating. And the type of hot flash that I find in a dysfunctional liver is the kind of hot flash where people's faces just all of a sudden start to heat up. So unlike the estrogen hot flash that I find, which is where it starts from, like, let's say the toes, and you have this ascending heat, the liver hot flash is the face heats up, goes right up to the face. Or maybe it goes from the chest to the face. Doesn't start from the toes going up. And part of this, I think, is because of detoxification pathways being overburdened. So the liver is basically our janitor organ. It's the thing that gets rid of toxins. And if it is occupied with getting rid of toxins that could outrightly kill us, then it leaves those things in our body that needs to be detoxified that won't kill us, like weird hormonal fluctuations that the liver has to process to get gone. So things like alcohol or sugar, these things will majorly impact the liver. If we are at all exposed to environmental toxins, that can overburden the liver. From a Chinese medicine perspective, anger and irritability impact the liver. So those are all things. And just to let you know that there is a particular type of detoxification pathway that's found in the liver. It's called the cytochrome P450 system. It's found especially in the liver cells, but they're found in cells all over the body. And one place that it's found also is in the adrenal glands. Remember, those organs that are involved with stress. Pregnenolone is a precursor to making estrogen and progesterone and testosterone. It's derived from cholesterol. So pregnenolone is made in the cytochrome P450 complex in the adrenal glands. So if the cytochrome P450 complex is overwhelmed with its detoxification, it can't make pregnenolone so well. So protecting cytochrome P450 systems is actually part of the key for a lot of women. And typically this also means protecting and optimizing liver function. Another reason for perimenopausal and menopausal symptoms would be thyroid dysfunction. So when a person has an underactive thyroid, a hypothyroid, they get heavy periods that are too frequent. They feel depressed. Their thinking is fuzzy. They'll get mood swings, weight gain, dry skin. Their hair might fall out. Their muscles might ache, and they'll feel tired. Does that sound like a menopausal symptom to you? It does to me. That's some of the classic hallmarks of them. And as far as hyperthyroids and overactive thyroid, the symptoms associated with that would be shorter, lighter periods that are further apart, but insomnia, heart palpitations, anxiety, hot flashes. And generally speaking, with thyroid dysfunction, we also might see changes to LDL, the so-called bad cholesterol carrying molecules that aren't responsive to any diet changes or exercise changes. That might also imply a thyroid dysfunction. Food intolerances can cause hot flashes. I think that part of the reason why it does that is because it overburdens the liver. But studies have shown time and time again that hot flashes can be a body reaction to common foods or chemicals, artificial colors or flavors or preservative agents or sweeteners, and then whatever the food intolerance may be. So I'm just going to list some of the most common food intolerances that may in fact trigger hot flashes. Dairy, wheat, sugar, alcohol, yeast, oranges, caffeine. But I have a patient who needed to get off red meat and her hot flashes went down. Like I said, I think it's related to liver function. The liver and digestion are very much interconnected, and I think this is an inflammatory response that's affecting the liver. And finally, other reasons for things like hot flashes might be hyperglycemia. So that's diabetes or blood sugar dysregulations generally. Other things that an elevated blood sugar can do is, I'm sure a lot of people have complained to you, Tracy, about waking up several times in the middle of the night to pee.
Oh, yes.
That is a very common phenomenon associated with menopause.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, point to elevated blood sugar levels.
Wow.
And the whole brain fog and diminished memory, that's also very much related to blood sugar levels. In fact, your question about going back to estrogen and brain health,
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much about the estrogen levels, I think, although to some degree it is. It's about protecting the brain from blood sugar imbalances. Dementia in some circles is actually classified as a type 3 diabetes.
Right.
So yeah, that these changes in blood sugar, specifically elevations in blood sugar, contribute to age-related decline. And I find that over and over again, when you can balance out your blood sugar to a healthy level, your memory comes back and you stop at night.
Amazing, amazing. And maybe, I know this is going a little bit off, a little sideways off the slides. What do you mean specifically by balancing your blood sugar? Is that, are you suggesting like cutting out sugar, just sticking to, you know, fruit and veggies, like no sugar?
I know that that's a very difficult concept to wrap a head around.
Yes, it is.
It sure is. It sure is.
The short
It's
answer is yes, right?
I'm actually going to talk a little bit about that later, just in a little while. But to answer your question, the short answer is yep. It's a very difficult thing to do. But the reason I think it's difficult is that people are addicted to sugar, much like heroin addicts are addicted to heroin. And in fact, studies have shown that in mice, when they're given drugs versus given sugar water, that their brains excite as if they're having drugs. And in fact, the dopamine and the addiction that is associated with it is actually somewhat more so than if you were to give them a highly addictive substance like heroin. So in fact, the reason why a lot of people go, I can't get rid of sugar, is because sugar is a socially accepted drug.
Whoa. Yeah.
And it takes effort. It takes effort, but the answer is yeah. And the answer is yeah. And especially if I see a lot of women who are inching toward diabetes, meaning they don't have diabetes yet. And according to conventional thoughts, they're fine, but they're not fine. And just by cutting out the sugar, keeping fruits and vegetables, right? Keeping healthy carbohydrates, but what I'm talking about sugar is refined sweets that you go to Max Milk for. That's what I'm talking about. I'm even thinking about fruit juices too, because even though the fruit is something that is healthy, fruit juice is you need a lot of fruit in order to make 1 cup of fruit juice. So the amount of sugar is very, very high.
I think there's also an emotional attachment that we have.
I agree. So that then goes to the whole idea of the adrenal glands and trying to affect stress levels. It's interesting because cortisol and insulin responses are kind of inverse, meaning when insulin levels are higher, cortisol is lower, and when cortisol is higher, insulin levels are lower. So when we go to sugar to curb the sadness, to curb the anger, to curb the grief, we're actually messing with our cortisol levels. And if we do that chronically, it can actually offset our adrenal glands and contribute to something called HPA axis dysfunction, which is where basically it just means that our brains and our brain control and our adrenal gland hormonal control is completely haywire. Everything is off balance. So that yummy treat to make you feel better temporarily is actually doing you a whole host of harm long-term and contributing to your elevated stress levels and dysfunction, short-term and long-term, honestly.
Right.
It's a work in progress. That's one of the hard things ladies have to do, and men, everybody. But it's something that I think is a huge deal because not only does it affect your adrenal glands and your blood sugar levels, but sugar is also highly toxic. So sugar affects your liver and will mess with your liver function and will contribute to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which will increase your not only difficulty losing weight, but also increase your hot flashes, your night sweats, everything surrounding that.
Big topic. Big topic.
Big
Maybe we
topic.
can have you come back and talk to us specifically about how we do this, right? Because I'm imagining that just cutting out the sugar can make a huge difference.
Huge. I have ladies who come to me for hot flashes and night sweats. I'll see that they are sugar addicts. The first thing I'll say is, you need to get rid of your sugar. When they pay attention to me and do, oftentimes their hot flashes go right away, away, away.
Cool. Love that.
Do we still have time for more,
We
or?
do. We do.
Okay. Okay.
If you
Let
can
me
stay
know.
a little bit longer, that would be awesome. I don't know what your
Okay.
time is like.
I'm still ready to go.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay. So here's just this is basically what we were talking about here, that stress seems to be a big deal and at the root of most menopausal and perimenopausal symptoms. And it is affected by many, many things. Carbohydrate metabolism, I'm sure you see Tracy, is at the very top.
Mm-hmm.
And then detoxification capacity. So that was our livers, our memory, our endocrine function, our muscles, inflammation. They all have and play a factor in stress, and so therefore play a factor in our symptoms that are associated with perimenopause and menopause. So now I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to talk a little bit about low sex drive, because that's a hot topic. And I hear a lot of ladies say low sex drive is associated with menopause, and specifically because of menopause. And I do know that, in fact, low sex drive is something that a lot of ladies deal with. But I would actually argue that in a lot of cases that sexual dysfunction arose far earlier than menopause or perimenopause. One of the big deals, actually the big deal associated with low sex drive is, again, stress. Remember that the adrenal glands, the adrenal cortex specifically, produces sex hormones, not just estrogen and progesterone, but also testosterone. And when cortisol levels go up, the cortisol is the hormone associated with with stress that's longer than 2 seconds. When cortisol levels go up, testosterone goes down. And so the elevation in cortisol suppresses testosterone. Typically, in an ideal world, if we had stresses that came few and far between, once that stress would go away, the balance should ideally resume and healthy testosterone production should come with it. And therefore, we would look at our partners and say, okay, let's go. But the problem is that with chronic stress, which is what most of us are under, testosterone becomes chronically inhibited, and that leads to poor sex drive. So my goal whenever I see someone who's experiencing low sex drive is to normalize cortisol production and modulate an adrenal gland response. And then that way I try to lower stress. I might do that through food. I might do that nutritionally or with herbs. And I'll often use homeopathic remedies for this, which I find to be very, very helpful. Just on the line with sex, another misconception is that ladies who are in menopause don't need contraception. So what I would say is it's true. If you are in a monogamous relationship and you know that your partner and you are the only people who are together, then menopause provides a wonderful opportunity to just be uninhibited. However, if you are not in a monogamous relationship, I want to just remind you that it's still important to use condoms, because STDs are on the rise in the 50+ age group, because we seem to forget this issue, and we have the same risk rates as younger people when it comes to STDs. So just remember to use a condom, not for pregnancy, but to protect from STDs. But then I think a lot of women are probably shuddering because condoms may exacerbate vaginal dryness, and vaginal dryness may in fact be one of the symptoms associated with menopause. And it's true. It may in fact be a result of lower estrogen levels that we need to balance. from one of these issues. You know, like I said, estrogen is made in smaller amounts in the adrenal glands, and specifically looking at restoring adrenal gland function is important. But I just wanted to also make you aware that there are other possible contributors to vaginal dryness. Smoking, certain blood pressure medications, they may increase vaginal dryness. Certain autoimmune disorders, I'm thinking specifically of something called Sjogren's syndrome. If you are in perimenopause and you are, if you have a hormonal IUD, or if you're on certain birth control pills, this in certain people may increase a substance in your body called sex hormone binding globulin. And this is a protein that's made in the liver, which binds estrogen and testosterone. So basically, if these medications increase sex hormone binding globulin, it lowers the levels of estrogen and testosterone in the bloodstream, contributing to vaginal dryness. Certainly, sedatives, anti-anxiolytics used for anxiety or panic disorders can contribute to vaginal dryness. Certain cold and allergy medicines can do it. And like I said, stress, big deal. It's a big deal.
You keep mentioning that.
I do, right? I feel like I'm a broken record. As you
Kind of a big deal.
It's a kind of big deal. I feel like I'm a broken record because really, really, the root of so much dysfunction, not just about the symptoms associated with perimenopause and menopause, but chronic diseases generally. This is the root. This is the golden nugget. And if we can address that, then I think it's a big deal. Now, I mean, having said that, we do need to try to balance estrogen levels. There are certain things that can be done. So first of all, like with partners, you can use lubrication just before. That might be helpful if that's enough. Coconut oil or aloe vera gel is a good natural lubricant, or almond oil if you're not allergic to nuts. Vitamin E, sometimes cracking open a capsule of vitamin E and inserting the vitamin E intravaginally. The studies have shown that over time that actually helps boost the lining of the vagina, and it contributes to increased vaginal health that way. There are also some studies on licorice root. So licorice root is a herb that's, by the way, it's used for adrenal gland dysfunction. It helps the adrenal glands. It also has a phytoestrogenic property to it. So meaning it's not estrogen, but it does help stimulate our estrogen receptors very weakly. And studies have shown that a 2% licorice root cream inserted intravaginally has been helpful to improving vaginal health and lubrication. And I've seen a lot of success with one other aspect, which is homeopathic medicines, which I tend to use quite a bit of. So there are, and more, there's more. I have to get to the root cause is really the whole stage of the game.
Amazing.
Okay. For those of you who are suffering from hair loss, who are thinking that it's genetic and expected, maybe it is, but maybe it's not. There are actually many reasons for hair loss. So if you're finding that you have hair loss, it should be evaluated before you just go and say that it's because I inherited it. It could be because of a wide variety of deficiencies. It could be that your body is not absorbing nutrients properly, so not so much related to a nutrient deficiency, but rather related to the way that your that your gut is absorbing these nutrients, and stress. Yeah. Okay, let's see what else we're talking about here. So I guess the question is, what can we do? What can we do at home, right? I mean, this is all fine and good. What can we do at home to bring the balance back? I think the big deals are, number one, a good portion of us have blood sugar imbalances. So if we eat sugar on a regular basis, if our diets in the morning are consisting of a double from Tim's plus a bagel with butter, chances are we are in blood sugar fluctuation on a regular basis. So we may need to do a few things to address that. Eliminate sugar as much as possible, or greatly reduce it. The better you are at this, the better you will feel, I promise you, long term. Although short term, because most people are addicted, I've seen some withdrawal reactions, kind of like a heroin addict withdrawing. But long term, it will make you feel better. I would also say to avoid artificial sweeteners, because those too will actually trigger an insulin response, even though they are not sugar. I would want to have people try to avoid refined carbohydrates like the white bread, white pasta, potatoes without the skin, and to try as much as possible to steer toward whole foods that looked like how they came from when they were picked from the tree or bush that they came from, or when they were slaughtered. Speaking of that, I would hope that we would get adequate amounts of protein. Protein is key, one of the key things to assist with blood sugar regulation. It's also important for liver detoxification. If we don't get enough protein, then we're not manufacturing the substrates that we need in order to assist with liver detoxification. So this is in fact a big deal. We also want to make sure that we have enough fiber in our diets so that blood sugar can be controlled. Also, this would be good for liver health because it would assist with detoxification through elimination, through stool. Adding healthy fats to our diet. So I'm thinking about the essential fats, specifically omega-3 fats that are found in things like wild salmon and flax seeds and chia seeds. And then things like raw nuts and seeds and avocado and coconut and that sort of thing. Adding healthy fats will help keep you fuller longer. And will assist with controlling blood sugar. And then the last thing that might be helpful to address blood sugar is to make sure you exercise. That can help curb cravings and normalize sugar.
But not exercise that's going to stress you, right?
I'm actually, so let's go there next. Okay.
That's the focus of what I'm teaching.
Let's go there next. Okay. So going to relatively lower down on the page, exercise, but not too much. And what I mean by that is you have to go at the pace that feels right for your body.
Right.
If you're that type A lady who's working like a maniac and then comes home to make dinner and do this and take care of the kids and yes, and then you have to go and run that marathon, or you have to go and do that high intensity interval training workout that you've done for an hour, that may in fact tax your adrenal glands further and contribute to the stress responses that are dysfunctional. So exercise is key, but you have to ask yourself, like you actually need to be mindful about this and ask yourself where you are today. So if you say I'm overwhelmed, then maybe you might want to do something like yoga and walking or meditation and that sort of thing, rather than the hardcore super sweating thing, to not tax your adrenal glands.
Right. Yeah.
Just keeping on the whole idea of addressing stress, anything that causes physical stress will tax the adrenal glands. So eating regularly, sleeping regularly, those are really important. If you're having issues with sleep, it needs to be addressed. And if you're not drinking enough, that too will contribute to a state of dehydration. And then, of course, you want to try to address stress through other techniques. And Tracy, I think you're probably an expert at this, with the whole idea of mindfulness, and doing what you do is a really big part of trying to assist with stress levels. There are other naturopathic things that we can do. I'm not going to go into them in detail here because it really depends on the person. But what I did write down is that there are certain nutrients that the adrenal glands need in order to function properly. So vitamin C, B vitamins, and magnesium. So that might be something to take if you wanted to. Those are things that, generally speaking, tend to be safe for most people. just working backwards here, improving liver function is key to assisting with detoxification. And in fact, for hormonal balance related to perimenopause and menopause, if it's not stress related, it's liver related, and oftentimes they go hand in hand. So babying your liver by avoiding greasy or fried foods and avoiding alcohol. And there are certain foods that actually help with its protection and detoxification. So I listed a few, like artichokes, broccoli sprouts, Brazil nuts, turmeric, and bitter greens. Eating a balanced diet is important, and you may want to identify and eliminate any toxins in your environment. If you ever wanted to have me back, we could do a whole thing on toxins in our environment that we can control, especially from not just our food supply, but our personal healthcare products and home use products.
Yeah, absolutely. Would be certainly.
Absolutely. And then the last thing would be to address digestion. You need to make sure that if you've identified foods that you've seen have caused you trouble, not just from a hot flash or night sweat perspective, but it causes you bloating or you feel loopy afterwards, this is a food intolerance. Your body is trying to kick yourself in the butt to let you know that something is wrong, get it gone. And if you have any sort of symptoms related to digestive difficulties, this is where you may want to see somebody like me to try to help bring you back into balance. And if it's not related to digestion, but just generally speaking, you've tried these things at home and you're still having trouble, this is where you need to seek help, to go to a naturopathic doctor or a qualified healthcare practitioner who deals with this sort of issue, to try to figure out where the imbalances lie and what can be done about it for you, because everybody is different. And no two ladies are alike, so too no two treatments are alike.
Thank you. Wow. Officially had my mind blown. We have, do you have time for 2 quick questions?
Of course, absolutely. I'm just going to take a drink.
Yeah,
hydration.
absolutely. We have a question here. What are your thoughts on pregnancy prevention methods that remove periods? I know that a lot of my friends do have the Mirena and they love it. A lot of other people are put on, perimenopausal women will often be put on the birth control pill to help with their symptoms. So what are your feelings on that? Well, they're 2 separate things, I suppose.
So as far as controlling periods by not having periods, I think that is a horribly unnatural thing and state of being. And I would say that the reason why women love it so much is because it masks the symptoms that are happening with them generally, which is that their periods are horrible. And this is a sign of dysfunction somehow. So they're painful periods, they're too heavy periods, they feel awful premenstrually. So they're masking symptoms. So the masking of the symptom might make them feel better temporarily, but it's going to come back at you in a different way somehow. I mean, unless you're on these things, I know that for example, in the religious Jewish community, that having hormonal contraception is key, especially for conjugal relations and making sure that you're not pregnant because of religious aspects surrounding things. So I can't comment too much that way, except to say that generally speaking, when you mess with hormones, you're messing with yourself and you are throwing things out of balance. So every action has a reaction, is what I would say.
And using birth control as a way to kind of limit I suppose it's just, instead of hormone replacement, it's a type of hormone replacement that they're giving women.
Yeah, it's a type of hormone replacement, and it still has a whole multitude of side effects associated with it, similar in nature to what I listed with hormonal replacement therapy.
I do think, and this is maybe going a little bit off topic, but anecdotally speaking, I don't think that there's enough awareness around what birth control is actually doing to your body. My
Right.
health changed completely when I went off birth control. Just saying.
When I went off the birth control pill, in 2 weeks, I peed out 30 pounds. My acne went away, my fatigue went away, and I stopped having yeast infections.
Wow. I think it's sold to us as something that's very safe. Yeah, maybe we can have another session on that.
We could certainly, I could do a whole thing on hormone, on synthetic hormones and what it can do to us.
Awesome. So then the next question has to do with intermittent fasting, and what you think of intermittent fasting is something to include in helping with symptoms. And I suppose there are different aspects of intermittent fasting, like you alluded to, don't eat at night. So that could be part of an intermittent fasting protocol. But then there's also intermittent fasting where people don't eat for 24 hours or 48 hours. I would assume that that's a bit too stressful for a menopausal woman.
So I think you've hit the nail on that. Maybe that it's not too stressful for a menopausal woman, but it might be too stressful. I think there's a lot of really good information on intermittent fasting, and there are a lot of studies to show that it extends life, that it basically battery boosts our mitochondria, which are the parts of our cells involved with energy metabolism, and may in fact be part of youth extension, life extension. I think I would have to talk individually to each person, because for certain people, intermittent fasting may be the key to help balancing their blood sugar levels.
Right.
In other people, intermittent fasting may be yet another stress that has been put on the body to exacerbate all things stress related. So I guess my take home is maybe see a qualified health practitioner to find out whether this is right for you, and how to go about eating in a way that is assisting with weight loss, assisting with stress levels, assisting with balancing blood sugar, and trying to balance hormone function.
Amazing. Thank you. Let's just see. We're going to finish off now. Thank you so much for your time. Let's just see if we get any more questions, because there is like about a 20-second delay, which is actually quite long. So maybe in the meantime, you can give me back the controls of the plane while we wait to see if there are any more questions. So please put through your questions. Let's see if anything is coming through here. Just give me
Can you remind me how to do that, Tracy?
Okay, so you click on my name, you go to participants and click on my name.
Thank you.
Make me host.
Thank you.
Okay, I think, are we back here? Let's go view and gallery view. Should work. Let's have a look. So any other questions, please just send them through. One more question and then we'll finish off.
Okay.
Let me see what's happening here. Speaker view, let me put it on gallery view. All right. I don't know. I can't see what's going on. There we go. Okay. This delay is very weird. It throws me every time. Okay, 2 more questions and then we're done. Okay. I'm 50 and haven't had my period since June. Do I need to contact my OBGYN about taking progesterone? I vaguely remember him telling me that we still need to get our periods. I'm confused on that.
At 50 years old, I would say that you likely do not need to contact your OBGYN to see about progesterone. This would be the time that I would expect that your hormones are fluxing to the point where you're no longer going to be a baby-making machine. I'd be concerned about you needing to look at your progesterone levels, or having some sort of period if you were in your 30s, maybe even early 40s. But at 50, I'm expecting that that this might be the start of maybe not having periods anymore. If you're concerned, still go and check, but I'm pretty sure that your OBGYN would agree with me that they would not be giving you progesterone at this point.
And last question, Any tips on how to maximize absorption of vitamin C, the Bs, and magnesium?
Okay, so as far as absorption goes, generally speaking, if you are having it through supplementation, I think that the further it's broken down, the easier it is to absorb. So for example, capsules are easier to absorb than tablets, and powders or liquids are easier to absorb than capsules. As far as magnesium and vitamin C and vitamin B goes, generally speaking, if you're having it in powder, liquid, or capsule form, chances are you are absorbing it in. I guess the issue comes is if you have a malabsorption syndrome. That doesn't involve tips now, that involves an actual discussion and trying to figure out what's wrong. But assuming that your digestion is good, I would just say liquids and powders are more easily absorbed than capsules. And if you can't stand the taste, capsules are easier to absorb than tablets.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so, so much, Becky. This was just illuminating, and I hope everybody watches it 3 times because there was just such an amazing amount of very, very useful information. Thank you. Because we do need to be educated, right? There is not an education out there, and unfortunately our health professionals are often not as educated as we expect them to be, because perimenopause and menopause apparently is not something that's really taught in med school. Apparently
No.
it gets an hour or something ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it blows my mind how I think just generally speaking, it's not just perimenopause and menopause. It's a lot of things that are so poorly dealt with, and just understanding what causes these issues and how we can go about balancing things out will go a long way to our health from now till 120. I so appreciate you having me. It was a pleasure and so much fun.
Thank you so much. And let us know where people can get hold of you.
Absolutely. You can find me. My website is rknaturopath.com. If you want to find me, I work out of the Limitless Health Naturopathic Clinic. I am, if you are in Toronto or in the GTA, I am on Highway 7, just a little bit east of Bayview. And you just go on my website and you can get my contact information, and you can shoot me a quick email to let me know what's going on or find out a little bit more about me.
And can you only consult with people in Ontario, or can you take like Zoom calls with people who are not in Ontario?
So it depends. I'm a licensed naturopathic doctor in Ontario. The licensure is such that if you're in a province that that is not Ontario, that where naturopathic doctors are regulated, I can provide some advice, but I cannot be your naturopathic doctor. If you are in an unregulated area, or if you are in Ontario, then I can be your naturopathic doctor.
Amazing. Thank you so, so much. Hope you enjoy the rest of World Menopause Month. There's something to celebrate.
Absolutely. And I hope you get outside, get some fresh air. It's a beautiful day today.
It is. It is. I'm about to hop outside right now. Thank you so, so much for your time and your expertise. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Time.
Okay. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.